Hey there.
Hey. So, all right. So, wanted to be transparent. So it was interesting because I was telling Sarah, I was like, with people kind of, unfortunate events with a few people we know, I was like, it's gonna be tough because I don't want to wait till next week because it's hard to kind of get people sometimes because things happens all the time. And I was like, I mean, I could get Sheena next week, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to get her to this week because, next week I won't be able to get the opportunity to catch you at a good time. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to do this now and I'm just going to do this. So I'm just glad that you're here, So it really does mean something to me personally for you to be a part of this. And I've been doing stuff like this for a while, but I really wanted to get people that I feel like is, I've been able to come across, especially with the EEDC, who's taught Sarah and I so much because it's such a game changer. Um, One of my other close friends, I'm gonna have him do something with me tomorrow. That he taught me everything I know about DJ. So I'm trying to get this whole Facebook part of it started.
Yeah,
Um, but other than that, how are you doing?
I am wonderful. How was your birthday yesterday?
It
Saw
was
that
great.
you were in the lazy pool or the lazy whatever river, whatever the heck they call it, over at the Marquee.
Yeah, so I used to work there when it first opened, and
Yeah.
and I did a lot of stuff there when it comes to try to make a difference and impact. I always tend to laugh at myself because I tell people like, yeah, I think I consider myself a pretty trash worker, even though I really wasn't. I don't think I was, but I just for me it felt good to just finally, and Sarah always wanted to be there, check it out, be in the
Yeah.
lazy pool. Especially just because she's been wanting to go swimming. And even though I personally don't care for Galveston
Uh-huh.
swimming like that, she was just happy that we was able to do that. So
Good. I'm glad y'all got a chance to do it.
yeah, she was it was very refreshing and it was nice. And it's interesting because we don't live too far from there, so
Right?
you thinking like, man, I can do something else with my money.
Yeah.
But
100.
I think it was just one of those things where I think for everyone now it's like, you know sometimes you just value a moment, just enjoying yourself. And sometimes we get so caught up thinking like, oh, why do I have to do this? It's only down the street, it's down the road from the house, it's gonna cost this much. Sometimes if you have the ability to do it and you feel like it's a little relaxing, why not take advantage of that moment to do so?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, we took our little one to the zoo today and like to Herman Park and just sort of like spent the day out. And she like of course was in hog heaven, and it was just nice to see her like just be able to spend some real quality time with us, sort of outside of our four walls, just because I feel like we've figured out and tried to figure out every game we can do inside our house. But it was nice to be out and about, and we don't do a whole lot out and about just because of everything going on. I've got an elderly mom that I see pretty often, so I'm always a little bit cautious. But it was worth it. It was totally worth it to get out and really soak in some sun and have her have a good time.
Yeah, let me log in real quick to this. But I was gonna ask, like, you know, now I want to save that question because I feel like that's a great. Okay, but yeah, that's great though. I think just I think what's been very interesting is I think people have to learn, and I don't know if people have, and I don't know if it's just people are so used to people need some type of normal, or they like the grind, they're used to always being busy. And I think in this situation you're being forced to adjust when you're told stay in the house and don't do anything and figure it out from there.
Right.
You have some people who they're fortunate to have some type of stability in their life where they say, look, this is unfortunate, I don't like being home all the time, but I'm not in a dire situation like being home is the worst thing ever, right?
Right.
You have other people who are in unfortunate situations where being stuck at home is the worst thing that can happen to them.
Right.
You have people who even financially, they wish they had the opportunity to, you know, continue to do some things they want to do. Um, and there are people who had to suffer, who still had to, for essential workers who still had to go out here and deal with the customers, deal with people in general. um I've learned over, I say, if you think about the last 20 years of my life, so since I was, what, 15, 14, is I've always felt that anytime something major happens, um let me all right, I'm gonna try to, with the one and only. All right. So, I, anytime I kind of expect for us to um, be better. Anytime things happen, I expect uh, people to kind of galvanize and really just try to put a lot aside. Anytime tragic events happen, it's like a lot of us think that, okay, we came together because we was resilient, but then at the same time someone else has to deal with the consequences. We just had 9/11. We just, you look at Hurricane Katrina, you look at even now during the pandemic, it's like we think that, oh, we had to come together because it's about, this affects our life a certain way, but then the, the only to me, yeah, you're resilient in the moment, but long term, all it is now, it's a group of people that are suffering due to the fact that some people think that this is supposed to be that way to feel good about themselves. I was living in Wisconsin still when Katrina happened, right? And to know that, okay, this happened, this is horrible. You see videos, you see pictures, and the first thing people you really started seeing the most was worried about the people and having all the calling them all the names because they decided to loot. But I'm seeing videos of someone's grandmother in a wheelchair sitting 105, 6 degree heat, had to be covered up, and we're worried about those things. And you know and I and it's so unfortunate, it really is, and it shouldn't have to be that way. And then during the pandemic, instead of people kind of like, okay, usually you think that only time you really are forced to sit at home and reevaluate yourself, you lose your job. But in this case, everyone's going through it at the same time.
Right.
And unfortunate, instead of people kind of taking a step back, okay, I'm gonna have to be home, I have some elbow room. It's like, no, that wasn't good enough. I need to go outside because I want a haircut. And it's like, no, there are people who are dealing with some real issues. And I think I joke all the time, New York might be moving forward, but I still feel like Texas is in phase one. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
Uh, and I know with you being in the industry, talking to a lot of couples that are still trying to get their weddings or moving some things around, it's been tough. And I know I've been pretty fortunate to try not to be business as usual. I understand we got to make this money. I understand we got bills to pay, but I'm an individual person. I can't be like these other guys. Like I have to be the best of what I can be when it comes to my service and my ability to connect with the people, because it's a people's business. Because if I start being business as usual, my reputation is on the line. It takes one person to have, hey, I booked with DJ Ramone and this happened and he did this, and I'm screwed. I'm not going to have a good 2021 or 2022. Some of these venues like the Springs can maybe do that and still be like, oh yeah, we did it because we wanted to. But anyway, so
Right.
So first and foremost, I just want to start out saying thank you. We Facebook Live and we live recording here. Is it okay? I'm recording you on here
Absolutely.
Zoom. Okay, but I like to do this because I like to get in the mindset, people's process. We always look at, okay, this is the beautiful painting that we have, and no one was talk about, well, I really had, the only way I get this color is I had to mix the blue, white, and red and purple together for him to look like a people. I care about stuff like that. But first and foremost, I'll start here. Just start out, you know, introduce yourself a little bit, the what you do, and what you currently are doing.
Okay, perfect. So my name is Sheena Cherian. I am, there's all these like generic terms of what they call people like us, but I'm essentially an entrepreneur. My dad was an entrepreneur, and I watched him sort of do his thing and run his small business. And I don't know, from a very young age, that was sort of ingrained in me. And so I've done everything from apartment locating to real estate to wedding planning, to now we're running a technology business. So I've sort of, this is all I've ever really known. I joke that I had, two real corporate jobs. One was at a law firm where when I actually thought I was going to be a corporate attorney, I worked there for 6 months and realized I never wanted to be a corporate attorney. And the other one was an internship that I had while I was in high school. And so, I mean, that was really sort of my only sort of corporate-ish gigs. Everything else has been centered around, the beautiful world of entrepreneurship. I was the program manager at the University of Houston's Wolf Center for Entrepreneurship for a number of years, and really just got I mean, that bug of being an entrepreneur and just really working with other entrepreneurs. It flourished from there. So super lucky and sort of grateful for the time that I had then. So for the last sort of several years, I've been in the wedding consulting business. I started off in just doing anybody's wedding, right? So that was where I started, and then sort of niched myself. Always did Indian weddings, but niched myself to at this point where we're doing luxury weddings, and just got to a place where I realized that we're helping a lot of wonderful people, and I love what we do. I get to touch, individuals' lives just like you do when you get to DJ, their special events. So I really am fortunate to do that. However, I wanted to be able to touch more lives and wanted to be able to really change the way that this industry is looked upon. And so we started a technology business. So we are an online platform that gives people, Indian couples, the opportunity to figure out, how to figure, when they're planning their weddings, like what do they need to be looking at? Budgets are different for Indian weddings than they are for American weddings. And so just understanding it from the perspective of an Indian couple. And so we've built a number of templates and, all the back end tools that couples need to plan and execute their wedding efficiently and without the stress and headaches. And so, yeah, so that's what we're doing now. That has been a lot of fun. It's been a totally different ball game just because I don't get to talk to people face to face like I used to. So we're all talking through a screen at this point. So COVID has definitely helped amp that up a little bit, which is awesome. But we're in a good place.
It's interesting as you say, we're talking about just talking to people. I think it's been a good opportunity for me and others to maybe just work on the operational part of your business, right? And maybe, there's certain things that you've seen that it's like, well, maybe I can, readjust a few things, maybe get some advice and change a few things. Sarah and I talk about that a lot, especially for the things she want to do. And should I do this? And she's been faced with a few disappointments when it comes to some of the things that she's been dealing with. Just trying to, and she's almost like, I'd rather just do it myself, but it's going to take some investments to do that. But you mentioned something about loss. So I'd open up by myself a little bit just to, when I was 1992, I was in first grade, right? And I remember they had like this fake election thing, and they had like it was Bush Senior, and it was Clinton, and it was like Ross Perot. And I remember at the time I was like, I want to be the first black president of the United States. And I knew in the process you're going to have to go to law school and deal with all these different things. And I was like, I always wanted to help the little people, the people didn't have, I always felt like that was a thing. And as you get older, you're like, man, there's a lot of morals and ethics that I don't know if I'm willing to deal with. You kind of fall from that. And because just naturally you just look at the efficiency of that you can replace and do well and service people, and then you just find other ways to do it. What's interesting now, fast forward when you're talking about being in the wedding industry, there's a science to it that people really don't know. um, part of me, I've always felt to change the narrative of how people view DJ. Because I understand that you're there to be entertainment, but you are, it's kind of like you are the starting quarterback and you might have to be the backup quarterback and backup running back, because there are times where DJs might have to take control of, maybe I have to be the wedding planner also, because, I've done weddings where they had the cousin randomly do it, but she just want to drink and hang out. So now you have to control everything timeline. You always have to check in with the couple. Um, I build strong relationships with the photographers and videographers, because I joke with them all the time. The worst thing to do is we're going to transition to cake cutting. Then we're going to go to cake cutting, and I didn't tell anyone in the bathroom. So it's a science of how you do it. And what's interesting, as we was, when I was taking the classes and we were studying in our industry, you learning that the average wedding costs about $38,000 now, even though not as many people are getting married than they probably were 40 years ago. But when it comes to the budget, DJs only make probably 5% of that budget, but we're like 85% of what people remember or whatever goes right or wrong, right? So there's a lot of pressure. We have so much value for the wedding, even though the money that's valued for us is not high. But with that being said, that's why I do consider myself as an entertainer that provides DJ services, because I don't really consider other DJs my competition. I look at it as we are competing with more than just DJs who can provide these extravaganza type build-ups where I got all these up lights and this and this and this and this. Number one is about your personality in music, because you don't want to be a human record box. And number two, if people wanted to, they can just get a speaker and build a Spotify playlist, right? And so that's always been my thing. Like, I generally care about the process when it comes to the wedding. You just making sure everything goes smooth. Nothing, what's the big word? Nothing cataclysmic happens, you
Right.
know. But even talking to a couple brides today, actually one of the grooms, I usually say couples because everyone and anyone can be married, but it's talking to people. They really enjoy the fact that you are detailed, because when you're doing these wedding shows, people just got engaged. They're still trying to figure everything out, and they just need someone who genuinely care about the process and help guide them, and not looking at them as like, man, I'm gonna have you have a good time and party, just pay me $1,000, and so, and I know with when you have, I know when we spoke and you was talking about the wedding, the industry that you're in specifically, the subcategory of weddings that you do, and the traditions you have to focus on, and things like that. It can be a lot. It can be stressful, because uh, your your reputation matters. so,
Absolutely.
um, so now going into 2020, you have the pandemic. There are challenges, right? We are not doing we're not doing weddings. We have a lot of cancellations. We have a lot of postponings and rescheduling. How was that? What have you been able to do to kind of adjust and deal with that? What type of challenges, maybe mentally or even maybe emotionally, that you felt like, oh, okay, I'm gonna have to do this, that you've really had to come to?
Right. So, Ramon, you touched on a lot of sort of really key elements of, things as they sort of, as you discuss them, in that little conversation. So, I guess first and foremost is I think that a lot of people in the wedding industry um, jump in because it's something that they love, right? They grab a camera, they love taking pictures. They love, or they get enamored with the fact that it's a couple and it's their special day, and they like that piece of it, right? And so you start off and you sort of get to it, right? And you're like, okay, so you're an entertainer, you do a couple of events, you have 100 people in the audience, somebody else sees you, they want you to come out and do their event. So stuff just starts to roll for you, right? And so it sort of is what happens, I feel like, tremendously across the board in our industry. So the one thing about this industry is usually the getting is good, right? Like, I mean, let's get serious. It's a great industry to be in, and it is in a situation like this that I think that good business versus mediocre versus not so good sort of sifts itself out, right? I can't tell you the number of businesses that I have watched that have gone under in the last 8 or 10 months, right? The other piece of it is that where I would have very easily given vendors 100% of a payment for somewhat of a discount on the to paid it on the front end. I won't advise clients to do that right now, just because I don't know what's going to happen, right? Like I have no guarantees that smaller vendors are going to be around in 18 months or something along those lines. So there are some shifts in that capacity that we've had to make. But in terms of focusing on operations, it is the baseline of our business, right? So if we don't get that right, if we don't, so the fact that you care about your clients, it probably bodes very well that they will actually come back to you and say, you know what, Ramon, I got to move my date. I hate doing this to you, but I want to work with you and figure out a date that works, right? If they didn't care about you, they'd be like, dude, like I got to move my date. If you can make it, great. If you can't, then I need a refund, right? And you don't want to be in that predicament, right? We didn't have a single client that was like, sorry, I got to move the date. So if you can't make it, then too bad, we'll find another planner, right? Like that wasn't the situation we were in. We were in a situation where everybody was like, okay, well, Sheena, I need to move my date 6 or 8, 10 months, whatever, down the road, a year down the road, whatever it was. And they were like, what do you have available? What can you make work in your calendar? And that's the relationship you want to build with your clients, whether it's in the wedding industry or any industry, right? Like you want your clients to go to bat for you as much as you'll go to bat for them. And I think that you taking the time to understand who they are and what they are and what they want, all of those things definitely help go a long way for that. In terms of shifts and changes, and I mean, don't get me wrong, it was rough the first several months because there was no end in sight, right? So there's still really no end in sight. We don't know exactly what's happening. However, um, I just have always been one of those people that have always looked to find a solution, like a win-win. Like, let's figure this out. Let's figure out what we can do, how we can make this work. And so my team got to working on what is CDC saying, what can we do in terms of the guidelines, and what can we set out to tell our teams, our vendors, to do for us so that we can be as safe as humanly possible. So we put together a document that essentially, legal went through it and they were like, well, you can't call it this, you can't call it that, you can't call it whatever. But we called it best practices, right? Suggested practices, something like that is I think what we ended up calling it. But essentially, it was like when I talked to my team of vendors, I was like, look, this is what the CDC is recommending. I just pulled that information between what the CDC was recommending, what the Hotel Association was recommending, and sort of like common sense, right? Like, don't share pens, like, don't get out of having water cooler conversations. I know we all want to hug and whatever, but let's not. Like, let's, you know, decorator, you come in from 10 to 12, and DJ, you come in from 12:30 to 2:30, just so that we could stagger things out. So our team just got to work, and we put together a stellar document that really, was sent out to all the masses and said, hey, look, this is what we're recommending as what we should be doing. And, don't get me wrong, not everybody wanted to do it because there's a lot of, just for, I'm not saying just, but for a DJ to have to wipe down all their speakers, all their mics, all their cables, everything, right? Like it's a lot. All the LED lights, all the intelligent lights, it's a lot. It's a lot of work, and it's a lot of equipment, not just equipment, but it's a lot of sanitation products, right? So it's just all of these things that you just want to be able to be aware of, right? So it changed the game, but that also sifted out good companies from the bad, right? Because there were some companies that were like, we ain't doing any of it. I was just like, you ain't coming to a wedding. Like, we'll change vendors. Like, I can't do anything about this, right? So if you're not willing to sanitize your products and your equipment, then I can't have it be safe for a guest. And so, I mean, yeah, it's not as pretty because we have to roll our silverware. We got to cover water bottles, I mean, water glasses, those kinds of things. It's not pretty, but it's safe. And that's really what's important. So that's if that answers your question. I mean, there was a lot of like changes that we had to do, right? So when you talk about a luxury wedding, the or any wedding, the reality is that I don't care what dollar amount you spend on it, it is somebody's hard earned money that they are putting towards it, whether it's $5 or whether it's 5,000 or 50,000. It is their hard earned money that they're putting towards that event. So you want to be as responsible with it as you possibly can. So yeah. So I mean, I feel like there's a lot of those kinds of details that just went into um, and just thinking about it, right? So that everybody was as safe as humanly possible.
And the thing is people have to be open minded to these things. I think, uh, some of the weddings I've been to, if I don't give a F was a definition of the dictionary for some of these weddings. It's kind of like, man, like I'm there, like, man, I'm kind of uncomfortable. I like it really is, and you start debating with yourself, like, should I really just, I can do everything possible, but if I'm surrounded by people, or a wedding that still decided to have 200 people, 250 people, because I know in some cases there's been a lot of technicalities that people are using. So when they started, I think when it's like, well, this is the percentage that's going to be open for public businesses. I've seen a few debates on some of the wedding groups wondering what about some of these wedding venues where they plan on having 200 250 people, and they say, well, they said that you can only have this many people here, and it's like, well, it's technically private property, so that doesn't really apply. And it's kind of like, it's like, well, the governor said public, they didn't say private, so I can still have all these people. And it's kind of like, I think that's kind of missing the point. But technicalities, people have been able to get by with those things. Um, so, I had a conversation with one of my closest friends, and I worked with him starting the industry, and well, I was there of a company that's not doesn't exist anymore here in Houston. They missed a major bag, and somebody started working there. He taught me everything I know when it comes to the DJ part. Right, I was DJing, I already knew music, but it's a difference when it was a game changer when he came about. He's DJed in the Caribbean, did radio stuff, and he's been in the industry for party lot events, and so we were talking about, was like, I was getting frustrated with like dealing with certain venues, and you deal with this, how certain things go, and it's like, man, should we do some type of consulting when it comes to like teaching people the process when the wedding, because it sometimes get frustrating where I used to, like, when you talk to a couple and then it's like, okay, I know they've been through everyone else, you think that, okay, no one else kind of told them that, instead of like you looking at them as like just a simple book me and I'd be able to get this done, because there's so much money you can make from it, especially when people don't know. You can make, I know people do their studying and things like that. A lot is based off of reviews or word of mouth, but I mean, like I said, it's an abundance of money a part of this, and people look at it like, man, if I could just talk you to get this money in my PayPal right now, and then for me, because I care about the process, I hear certain things. It's like I kind of wish, and because you're consulting, like, what, now that I fast forward, you are teaching business, you're teaching the process of building a business. We met at my graduation and now that you're teaching, what really had you say, you know what, I've been doing these other things and I'm still involved, but I really want to have an opportunity to teach other business, other entrepreneurs, other people that's interested in growing something, and become a voice, become a guidance, become a mentor to them. So what really had you transition to doing that?
You know, and I don't know that there's anything. I feel like helping people is sort of a calling that some of us are called to do, right? Like it's not right or wrong. It's just the way that we are, right? And I just genuinely believe that, um, there's something special about teaching. So the truth of the matter is that when I started my wedding consulting business, what I started and what I did then, nobody can do today and get the same results, right? I was one of three wedding consultants across, I was the only one in the state of Texas that was focused on Indian weddings. I had two competitors, one in California and one in New York. Like, so the world was, I mean, the city was really my oyster, right? Like the state, the region, nobody could compete today, right? But the lessons I learned, right? Like if I can impart that knowledge to somebody else and they can get further down the road, then I've helped to make this world just slightly better for them. And if I can do that, why take it to my grave? Like I don't understand. And it's the one thing I'm going to say, and I don't know if it's because of my nature in terms of I like to help people, and so I maybe gravitate towards other people that like to help me. I don't know, but I am where I am today solely because people help me out. I I cannot tell you the number of people that when I launched my first business, I was 22 and a half years old. And we went out and raised way too much money that like I had no business raising, well into the several millions of dollars. I mean, but like I had people help me and teach me and show me what I was doing, right? Um, and that sort of was in this place of, okay, well, very successful business people in the city, right? That helped me to get to where I could get to. And I just saw it from that perspective of if these guys are successful and they can turn around and help. And at the time, I was so young that I didn't have the confidence that I have today in myself. But I really believe like I didn't have a whole lot of business acumen and didn't have real understanding of this stuff. And so I just soaked it all in like a sponge. And if they were willing to do that for me and take a chance on me, then I felt as though I owed it to not just them, but to the next generation of entrepreneurs to help them in whatever capacity that I could, right? So I don't know everything. By any means, I don't know everything. I still make a lot of mistakes. I am not perfect. I am human. Though I've learned a lot. I've been at this for nearly 20 years. I've learned a lot. And whatever I can do to help somebody else, great. I am not the world's best teacher, honest to goodness, right? Like, I am not, I'm really one of those people that just want to give you an answer, right? Like, and that Socratic method of getting someone to actually think about their question and really come up with an answer is a much better teacher. So I am not that wise. However, I am willing to sit down and listen to somebody and share with them what I've learned, how I've learned, and I'm an open book when it comes to that. I mean, whether it's in the wedding industry or whether it's completely different in the graphic design business, it doesn't really matter to me. Like business is business, and we all have something to learn from each other because we're all sort of fighting the same uphill battle about how do you get people to take notice of you? How do you make a great product? How do you price it right? How do you get people to, sort of, how do you interact with people? Like all these things that we all have to do, regardless of whatever industry we're in, regardless of what widget we're selling, it sort of is all the same. And so I've just learned that, the more that we help each other out, and I'm going to tell you that I do feel like that's a little special to Houston, Texas. And maybe because Houston's very special and near and dear to my heart. But I feel like in Houston, Texas, there isn't this, oh no, I can't share anything, right? Like I feel like we're very willing to be helping each other out. So it's sort of a special helping to live here?
So I'm glad you said that because, I have I'm all right hate relationship with Houston. Um, there are a lot of things fundamentally, like I understand, you know, on the surface, like if you just like to live your life and do your thing, you don't really think about, if you don't think too deep about everything, I think you'd be fine here. But when you're involved in so much and you learn so much and the details and everything else, compared to how loud people are and the love and the arrogance about the love people do have here, I understand that. But I guess for me, I think I've try to do so many things to kind of feel like to make a difference. Like you still feel like it's a disconnect, and one of those things is this ability for people to kind of like, is it what they say? Do they like trade secrets or something like that, or just kind of like, hey, this helped me, this how it could help you type thing? Like people, too many people like keep it so much close to the hip, and I don't know. I haven't. I'm glad I felt that way for a long time until I'm probably about a year. Uh Maybe no, I say probably 2 years because until I moved over here specifically, meeting you, John, Ella, a few other people who's like just so open and welcoming where it's not like it's nice to have people talk to you instead of talk at you, right? Um and it's like I wish that happened 10 years ago for me because I've been, I've met Sarah 5 years ago and I was like, honestly, we joke about this all the time. If Sarah didn't have family here and was investing here because of her family and she loved, love it here, I would have found a way to be out this piece. Right. But the thing about it is I don't really know where else to go. I think anywhere you go, if you're not utilizing what's around you, you're going to hate it regardless of wherever you go. Right. I can go out the country right now and if I'm not making the right decisions and things I want to do, I'm gonna be miserable somewhere else if I'm, not doing what I'm supposed to do. Or connecting with the right people. But uh I actually like the fact that you mentioned all those things because um I don't know, it shouldn't be an underrated thing. It shouldn't be underrated where there are people who genuinely like it's different where it's like, yeah, I just like telling people, like people genuinely care to uh help others. And I think utilize, like you and John can teach any and everything. But the thing that y'all really do is, hey, these are resources, connections to resources that really kind of that puts the cherry on top, right? So y'all could have had the class and everything else, but then after that, it's like we never would have got connected to the U of H along, things like that, or and those are resources, those are relationships that y'all have built to say, okay, or even talking to the gentleman that was able to show us about Facebook marketing and things like those things like that to me is so important. And for me, even if I hear the same thing 10 times, and I think people get lost in it, it's kind of like watching a movie. You can watch a movie 10 times and you'll always notice something new that you know before. And I feel like that information for me, even if you're like, man, I already know this, it's like for me, I don't mind because it's like, man, I didn't really think of that. It's nice for that refresher. Yeah. Oh,
All
you
I'm
about to say
going to
something?
say about that is there's and I'm going to butcher it now because I'm not great with quotes. I get the gist of them and then I sort of move on with my life. But when the student is ready, the teacher will arrive, right? Like that sentence or that quote goes to say that we have to be in the right space to absorb the information, right? So, it's ironic because I'm reading a book right now. I'm in a book club. I'm reading a book, and I was telling the people in the book club that I hated the book the first time I read it, right? But I also think that I was in a different mindset, right? And so today I'm in a mindset where I can read the book and appreciate what it has to say, right? So it's about spirituality and my faith and this sort of stuff. But Like, it's one thing if I'm in a place where, and the one sort of thing about entrepreneurs that you have to always take with a grain of salt is we sort of, not sort of, we are taught um, to really say that everything is perfect, right? It's our business. It's perfect. Everything is great. Um, it couldn't be better. I mean, I can't, I mean, there's so many of these catchphrases that I know my entrepreneur friends that say to me, like when you ask them about their business in a general setting. When you get one on one with them, they can get real, right? Like they'll start to tell you what's really going on with their business and where things are and what have you. But that sort of confident level of everything is perfect, that sometimes gets the better of us, where we're telling everybody that everything is perfect. And if I really peel back a layer of an onion, maybe Ramone will see that everything isn't perfect, right? And then I have to deal with that, right? And then what if a client hears it, right? There was a little while there where I was just so burnt out with planning and with consulting and what have you that I was telling one of my mentors that, and I literally, like, we were at lunch and I literally like peered over to see that there were nobody that was Indian in the restaurant. Because what if somebody heard that I was tired of wedding planning, right? But it was just, I was burnt out. It was, I needed to take some self-care time. I needed to do some things for me, but it was hard. I couldn't tell clients that. I couldn't tell I mean, I definitely couldn't talk to my competitors about that, right? So, but the reality is that's where it's helpful. If I'm talking to my competitors and realizing that we're all burnt out because our clients now are watching, and at the time there was a lot of this bridezilla nonsense, this four weddings and I mean, what was it like? They were rating the four weddings that you would go to or whatever. I mean, there was just so much wedding TV out there that it was just like everything just became about how perfect something looked on a piece of, on a table, and so it was just stressful. It was just it wasn't a fun time, and so it would have been helpful to talk to my competitors about it. But I think that the moment that you sort of reach out that olive branch and say, hey, look, I'm going to be real with you. Just, I expect you to be real back with me. I think that that opens up some great dialogue. And I think that that goes across the board for whether that's your friend that helped you out in the DJ industry or others that are out there in the market. But I definitely think that um, I think that there's room in this, not just in this industry, across the board in business, in this city, for people to really help each other out. And that's why I think that it works across industry lines, right? So a DJ may not feel like, okay, well, if I tell Ramone how to do all this stuff, then he'll take all my business, right? So when you start talking to somebody that's in another industry and you start talking about marketing ideas or, things of that nature, it helps because there's no sort of fear of whatever. But the reality is that nobody can take your clients from you. That is the reality. Clients are going to come to you because it's a good fit, and I don't care how much you fake people will see through that relatively quickly. You may go through a year without getting the clients you deserve or whatever, but in the end it'll all come back to where it needs to be. But anyways, that's a whole nother
Yeah.
conversation.
And I've learned that also. And what's interesting is if you're confident in yourself when it comes to what you do, look, I can give someone all the advice possible what to do, the process of DJ and how to do the steps, going from helping everyone to their timeline. I, I don't mind it because I know that, I don't think they're going to have the personality that I have. Like I could, you just have to be confident. Like, look, I know myself. Like I've, even recently, I know some schools are trying to figure out what to do around homecoming, what type of events they're going to do, and kind of open up. They messaged me and it's like, hey, are you available this day? Unfortunately, I have a wedding that day, but I didn't think schools is going to happen, whatever. So that's why, especially September, October time.
Right.
And then they hit me up again. And it was like, look, like they asked me like, "Yo, are you available this day or this day?" Why? Because they they want that specific. They want you.
Right.
That's why relationships are so important. That's why building, and I've, when you learn those things, and for so long when you're working in retail, or in my case working in restaurants, and you're just the worker, like, you get so frustrated because some of the things that your coworkers or managers get you on, in your mind you're thinking like, no, I feel like I'm doing the right thing, like this works and it's great for me. And so now doing the things that I've always felt was right, it's really going my way now, right? It's amazing. Like, oh, I know I'm not. He's like, I knew I wasn't tripping, right? Um, and so that's part of the science, right? So now that it's been a lot of reevaluating. It's been some time to be able to sit down and try to figure yourself out, especially because it's been very challenging for people who uh, they they've been so focused on their mental wellness, right? Mental health this year has probably been, it's like top of the list. People been whispering about it, but now more than ever, like, it is essential now. I think um one of the first things I did a few months ago with some friends, I believe, she does planning, and she's been doing some stuff at the hotels, but she was talking about how we treat, especially with mental health, we just treat it as one of those things where it's just like, all right, well, you do this thing, you be fine, instead of looking at it kind of like how people work out on a daily basis, right? Where every day you go to the gym, you lift weights, you are doing that every day, and people kind of need to have that same approach when it comes to our mental health, our mental wellness, where this is a daily challenge. What kind of got me doing this was, having so many friends and things to talk about. And I'm not an expert, but because I genuinely care, and being an empath, which for better or for worse, you can do a lot of things for you. But
Sure.
uh, it's, if you can comprehend the daily challenges, like people just think that somebody wants to wake up and think the way they think. They're fighting to not, they're fighting through that. But with that being said, with all the challenges for this year, especially for you, what are, you know, you probably had some goals change, or maybe remain the same. But what are your goals within the next couple of years for yourself and as a business, or maybe creating future businesses?
Sure. In terms of that, and I don't know very many entrepreneurs that do this because it's a money game, right? I don't know very many entrepreneurs that do it because it's a money game. I, when I said that I decided that I didn't want to be a corporate attorney, it was for one single reason. I interned, I was in their I was a file clerk, and so I like pulled files right out of their big huge file room, and I took it to attorneys. And I there was an associate attorney that I walked into her office on a Tuesday afternoon, and I dropped files in there. On Thursday, I walked back into her office because I came in the afternoon. Thursday, walked back into her office and to drop off some other files, and she was still in the same clothes. And I was like, "Have you gone home?" And she said, "No." They were backed up against the wall on some sort of really terrible deadline. She was ready to leave at the time, but she had been there nearly 36 hours. And I was like, I can't do that. Like, there's no way that I could do that for somebody else, right? And so it's this sort of sense of this is what I can do and I will do and I won't do whatever, right? And so it's where I made the decision that if I'm going to work that hard, I'm going to work that hard for myself, right? But on the flip side, it was this pure understanding that family came first, right? So when my parents needed something, or they want to go somewhere, or when my dad got sick, or if one of my nieces throws up at school and they need somebody to go pick them up, I just had the ability to be able to do that, and I love that. I absolutely like the fact that I can be there for, and I don't have this huge family, but for my immediate circle, I can be there, right? And I like that. And this career path afforded me that luxury. Now, it also, I lost a lot of friends in the meantime because I gave up on my weekends to do weddings. And so I didn't get to go to every baby shower, bridal shower, graduation party. What I just didn't get to go to all of them, right? For my nieces and my immediate family, I was always there. Like, moved heaven and earth to not take on weddings, to not do whatever. It was a family affair. I was going to be there. But friends and extended loved ones, I couldn't always do it, right? Like, it was not possible. So there's a lot of that. There's give and take. But where I'm going with it is that you got to figure out what your why is. What do you want out of this world? And what Ramone wants out of this world and what Shena wants out of this world, there's no right or wrong. It's what Ramone wants and it's what Shena wants. And as long as we strive to do what we need to do in this world, again, I mean, I hope that people leave it a little bit better, and I hope that people, do right by other people and aren't too greedy. I mean, all those kinds of things, right? But for all intents and purposes, if you can figure out what that is for you and you can go out and make it happen, I think that there's a real beauty in that, right? So my goals really for this year has really been much more centered around, so because of the way life happens and whatever, right? Like I'm deeply rooted in my faith, and I genuinely believe that God gives us what we can handle. And we had been trying to have children for a really long time, and we didn't have, we didn't have Abigail until, we were married at that point by, 13 and a half years. I think we were married actually 14 years by that point, when we actually got her. And the thing is, that's, really kind of crazy to me is that I didn't want to miss anything with her, right? Like, once we got her, it was all about how am I going to make all these things and all these moments and memories, with her. And so, the kind of the cool thing that we had with COVID was the fact that we got to spend a lot of family time together, right? Like, there was no sort of like, there weren't people pulling for our, oh, come to this or come to do that, whatever, right? We just got to spend family time, which was really great. So I was on, I mean, I heard the call last week, and yeah, sure. I mean, when you're in some close environments together a lot, I mean, sometimes there's room for a little bit more, whatever is between couples and what have you. But, we love each other. So we'll figure it out, right? Like, I mean, so yeah, I mean, the fact that we were all breathing on top of each other for 8, 10 weeks or whatever, because everybody was working from home, made it stressful, but we figured it out, right? So in terms of that, the goals have always been about family and how to figure out what we can do as a family, what we can do, to make this world a little bit better, our community a little bit better, those kinds of things. So, yeah, there's a money goal because we got to pay a mortgage and I got to put gas in my car, right? But I didn't get so caught up in, I've never been super caught up in, I just need to do A, B, and C in terms of dollars. And I think that people, especially in the wedding industry, would do better if they actually cared about the client, because it goes back to what you said a little while ago. There's a lot of money to be made in this industry, and I made a significant amount more when I started to really care about clients. Like, when we became a boutique company and we stopped trying to do 40 weddings a year and we stopped trying to do all this other extra stuff, and I started to get really focused on how can I really help a handful of clients, we double, triple, quadrupled our revenue and had one-fourth the number of clients. Like, that was where it started to become, because I really got to know people much, much better. And I really got to make an impact on their wedding in a way that I couldn't when I was doing 50 weddings in a year. And so, the goals became, so for me, to that end, you know, for me, the goals have really been much more about a lot of these kinds of things where it's been much more centered around how can I best help my team? what more can I do for the people that are in my inner circle rather than just about how much money can I make, right? That may not be the right answer, but that's really what it's been.
So I completely agree, and kind of he just somebody I like to listen to. His name is Bomani Jones. He did a TED talk, and it was just kind of like do what you have to do, so you do what you want to do. And I think the hardest thing for people like us in so many ways is when you have all these creativity, you feel like you're your own person. You feel like sometimes there are things that you've been asked to do, working regular jobs, and you feel like doing those things can take you away from the things that you really want to do. Like you feel like I have to give something up to, and it's like I really enjoy being myself. Like if I want to be in a grocery store and I start dancing, being goofy, just let me work. I know Sarah sometimes, Ramone, it's like no, I think that I've learned that because I know when to be serious, I know when to be goofy, but I feel like people when they see someone that just have energy and some type of joy, they want to be a part of that, right? There are people who they hate that, like, oh, why are you so happy? I just had somebody. She just started her bartending services. She works at the Marriott Marquis downtown, and she's been in like these contests. We talk about that. She's from LA. She's talking about how just since she's been here, she has this just natural bright energy, and people just kind of look at her like, why are you happy? Um, so, real quick, I want to ask. I've been want to ask, but I just wanted to make that point first. Okay, so kind of it's with you. It seemed like for you, it was very important for you to do and be uh, in a strong extension and build a strong business um, in the wedding industry, but doing a lot of you've always I've heard you say that, did you always say like was it East Asian, South East?
Southeast Asian.
Yeah. So doing Indian weddings, tradition is like traditional Indian weddings, but uh, kind of transition for Hollywood. What does representation mean to you, right? So you have a lot of actors, actresses who are who of Indian descent, and actually, I actually rock with a few of them, but it's like what does that mean to you and able to see those things in comedy, be able to see that even stand-up comedians, if you see that television shows, movies, and now people are a lot more cognizant, like yo, instead of what I remember watching this thing where it was talking about how horrible, even though people love The Simpsons, how wrong for people for 20, 30 years to have a perception of who Apu was, right? And then you look at, and then the transition now where people can see, it's kind of like how people view Black Panther, right? But you have these other movies, or for a lot of Asian actors, you look at what happened, the movie that came out that was huge. I still didn't see it.
The wedding movie.
Yes. And so, but when it comes to representation, how has that been for you? Because I can imagine that. Let's keep it a buck. Look, it's so many different circles and groups in Houston. So that there's a market for everything that you can find. But it's for you. You said, look, I could be in this industry and do, I could do everyone's wedding, but you know what? I'm going to be the voice and I'm going to be representation to let a lot of people who wants to get married, especially Indian weddings, traditional Indian weddings. And what do you call it? A South? I don't want to say it wrong.
South Asian. South Asian.
It's okay. South Asian weddings, like that was very important for you. So obviously that means representation matters to you. So how has that been for you and everything else? I think that'd probably be the last question. I've always wanted to ask this.
So, kind of interestingly enough, I actually think that the decision to become a South Asian wedding consultant was because I didn't see someone else do it, right? And I was like, well, there's a lot of us here, right? Like I just inherently knew that there was a lot of us in the community here. And so there just wasn't anybody doing it and whatever. So that was sort of just this need and sort of desire to sort of help my own, right? That was all it was. And interestingly enough, I'm going to tell you that my very first meeting with, and I wanted to get advertising in Weddings in Houston, the magazine, which is run by Indians, mind you. But anyways, I wanted to go get advertising, pay for advertising in that magazine. And I sat down, and she is still a dear friend of mine, but she looked me straight in the face and she told me that I was pigeonholing myself, right? Like I was niching myself so far down, big market, I should be able to do anybody's wedding, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I genuinely believed that nobody was taking care of these types of weddings. Little did I know that I didn't even know what I was getting into, right? Because I'm Christian and from South India, which is probably about as vanilla as you can get, right? So our weddings are very similar to American weddings. Sure, we have some extra traditions and some extra customs and those kinds of things, but for the most part, simple ceremony at the church, reception at a hall, right? Like, so that's sort of how we do it. Then I started to get into Hindu weddings and Punjabi weddings and all these other types and cultures of weddings. And then I realized that the world was so much more. And it was 5-day affairs and it was all these other elements to it, what have you, that I just loved and I absorbed and I really learned very quickly. So to me, it was really important. The thing that probably, so it's funny because I actually just this year watched a Netflix a comedian that had a Netflix special that joked about the Simpsons, right? He made, kind of a stereotypical, comment about Americans, and he said, "Well, that's what you guys get for doing that to us on The Simpsons for so many years, or whatever,"
Yeah.
right? But it's funny, but not funny, right? So it's the sense of, even though I don't know that we're there yet, right? Like 100%. And I'm just being very honest about it, right? I think that we've made huge strides. We've got, people in the makeup industry that are actually making makeup that is suited for our skin tones. We've got people that are in all kinds of industries, clothing and otherwise, that are making clothes that are fusion. So it's really making strides, right? So I'm super proud of where we've come. We've just got a long way to go, right? Like as a country, we have, I mean, you know, to really not be what we call a melting pot where everybody just sort of is, morphed into everybody else. If we want to have that representation of each of us, we've got a long way to go. But I'm super happy to be a part of it. I'm super proud that, I was a pioneer, right? Like I was the first person in the city that is of South Asian descent that created a wedding consulting company that went out there and really killed a market. And so I'm super proud of what I've done. I'm more proud that I opened a door for so many girls behind me to do exactly what I did. I'm much more proud of that. Sure, they've taken money out of my pocket, but that's okay, right? Like it's the thing is we created an industry at this point. There's some real beauty to that. Um, and I don't hate on them for doing what I want them to grow and to make me, because every time they get out there and they're doing something, it only makes me smarter and stronger and says, okay, look, if they're going to do that, I'm going to do 10 times better. And I'm always trying to amp up my game. And it's what makes the entire industry better. And that's what I love about this kind of stuff, right? So it's why I don't feel like, helping each other out is a bad thing. So, um, again, and I don't know that you feel like, and in terms of generationally, as a culture, Indians have only been here essentially 2 generations, right? Like we essentially, for the most part, the bulk of Indians sort of immigrated here in the early 70s, maybe the mid 70s. So we haven't been here very long, right? So we're making a lot of headway. But, you know, if we're still talking about Black Lives Matter and y'all have been here for how many years, right? Like, so,
Yeah.
so yeah, so we're making headway. I just don't know that we're 100% the way there. Does that make
Well,
sense?
it's a hell of a process because even if you hear stories about what the Vietnamese has had to go through when they came here in the 70s. And you know, the thing that always, for every single culture you can think of, usually what tends to have people, I don't even know, I can't even say comfortable, because but it seems like food is like the thing that really people were able to kind of be comfortable cross culture and things like that. And it's like, oh, you know, it's one of those things where you don't have to be for me, I like I'm probably trash at Spanish, but I know good Mexican food when I have it, right? So but I it's so the you know, it's interesting as you say that, because I can, you know, I'm gonna just say it like I'm probably gonna use the "me my friends black" type argument. So the shows that, like, I think that really kind of hit hard, they became mainstream outside of like Mindy Kaling being in office that everybody loved. But if you look at Never Have I Ever, just came out last year, and Master of None, right? And I think, you know, Sarah and I watched those things, and I, you know, it's a few other, and I really enjoy. It's weird because you wonder, like, man, TV was kind of trash and boring. Because look, let's keep it. I don't really care about Friends like that, but I really like how you have stories where you have children, first or second generation, and they have the storyline based around trying to get their parents to comprehend their American lifestyle, and they have the love and appreciation for that, but the adjustments that they feel like their parents should make, or the adjustments that even they probably have to make, trying to make sure that they still have their pride for who they are and where they're from, but also just trying to navigate themselves into everyday life here in America, depending what, you know, coast you live on. And I always find it so interesting in those things, and they're both comedy, so you can add, it's laughter there. And so now you know, I'm not saying we've moved past the food part of it, because like you know, it's been about 30 years, like, but I think now, you know, all right, the first 25 years, we, all right, it's been a few things here and there, but now we can get to the creativity part. Now we can get to trusting these people to be your writers, trusting these people to be mainstream, where they actually become a face of something. And yeah, that's for everything. You know, um I know, just, you know, I was watching the Bruce Lee documentary. He's talking about the narrative changing between having Asians, Asian Americans, and also people come from China, come from Japan, or coming from other places in Asia that had to just come to America, especially even on the West Coast. So, but other than that, thank you very much. I will be doing something again next week. Have more people. A few people did like, hey, you know, I know it's been crazy, and I couldn't miss this opportunity. I've been, you know, since I didn't do a class with you, you do all the talking to Sarah. I was like, man, I want to talk to her too. But
Whenever you
so
want that, call me.
yeah, it was great to catch you one on one, and then it'd be great to have other people included. And I'm gonna bring a few people that I know, able to kind of cross paths and talk about on the deeper level of things, compared to just learning about the business. I think it's so much more to it, especially the mental aspect, and just the process in general. The process is that's what I care about. So Sheena, you are the best. You are the one and only. Keep out here thriving, surviving, doing your thing, and you be safe out here and get this money.
Thank you. You take care.
All right, thank you.
There. Bye.
Bye bye. All right, y'all. Appreciate it. Thank you for coming through, Sheena, once again. And you be able to follow her. I didn't even ask her for information she can give y'all to follow her. That was on me. But all right, y'all take care.